Hey, this is Amanda, women's health dietitian.
And I'm Emily, nutritional therapy practitioner.
And this is the You Menstrual podcast, where we help you navigate the confusing world of women's hormones and teach you how to have healthy periods.
Each week, we will be diving into a different topic on women's health and sharing our perspective using nutrition, female physiology, and metabolic health.
Our goal is to help you wade through conflicting health information and empower you on your healing journey.
We hope you enjoy it.
In this episode, we will be focusing on the nuanced subject of anxiety in our failing healthcare system. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Michelle Shapiro. Michelle's an integrative functional registered dietitian and patient advocate practicing virtually in New York City. In her one-on-one practice, Michelle helps executives heal from stress and digestive issues so they can lose weight and restore their energy while experiencing a deeper connection with themselves and with life. Michelle created Wellness Map, a functional medicine patient advocacy membership to empower clients to become the boss of their own healthcare and teach them how to navigate the healthcare system, all while getting access to discounted services. Michelle works to connect members with naturopathic and functional medicine practitioners to create sacred spaces for healing. Thank you so much for being here, Michelle. These are really big topics. Will we cover everything in this episode? No. Will we have you back? Yes.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the issue is that you and I could talk for 10 hours about each one of these things, and we have, by the way. So I just have to say, Amanda, it is the joy of my life to be with you here today. I am so excited. I've been excited for this.
Yeah, we've been planning this one for a while. If you follow us on Instagram, you'll see Michelle and I meet up with our friend Jillian a few times a year and connect, where Michelle's in New York. Jillian, if you don't follow her, she's at Jillian Graves, and she's in Boston. And of course, I'm from Connecticut, so we all get along, our Northeasterners. I brought Michelle on. There's so many topics we could possibly discuss, but I was like, what do people need? And what's something that I feel like isn't quite being talked about a ton, and things that I hear just like every day, which I know you're going to relate to. And a lot of that's just to shed light on one, anxiety, and what are the different causes. A lot of things we know about anxiety, from a holistic perspective, aren't actually true, which we'll dig into, but then also our healthcare system. And I actually got this request from a woman in my membership, because she's just super frustrated trying to find the right doctor, all that kind of stuff, and just how difficult that has been. And this is something we talk about a lot, so we can kind of get into the nitty gritty there too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that these issues, funny enough, are also really interrelated. So we'll see where they play into one another. And these are things that you definitely talk about a lot, but I think we can do a deeper dive for everyone here, which will be really exciting too.
Yeah. So why don't you share a little bit about your background and like your health journey, if you don't mind, and just how you got to focus so specifically. You're really focusing on like weight loss, anxiety, gut issues. What brought you to that space in the functional nutrition world?
So every solid practitioner usually has a really solid story to go along with them. And it's a healing journey for all of us. So thank you for inviting me to share my story. And I think it is important for me to introduce myself, because the areas that I treat are, of course, what I've experienced. And that's super common amongst practitioners. Not necessary, but common. So I grew up in Queens, New York, was in a super huge high school, 5,000 students, very diverse, which is my favorite thing about my upbringing overall. And I think that growing up there, individuality was something that was really appreciated. From the time of being around 8 years old till I was around 17, occupied a larger body. And I realized growing up in Queens, I have a big sense of humor, was class clown at that high school, by the way, major shining accomplishment of my life. That's all I have, basically, is that accomplishment. But I realized growing up in Queens that, body sizes were a lot more accepted. Diversity in every single area of life was a lot more accepted. And I was going to the University of Delaware, and I realized, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if people are going to accept me in the same way. It's a much more homogenous environment. So I was like, I think I'm going to have to do something to be like conventionally acceptable when I go there, because I had the same friends growing up and I had the same huge life. Like I had a beautiful life, and weight for me wasn't always a huge concern, even though I was at the time what would be qualified as 100 pounds overweight. So basically, in the time before going away to college, I just made a decision, because this is the type of personality that I have, that I'm going to just lose all of the weight before I get to school. And this is a huge trigger warning. This is not a tale of what to do. This is a tale of what not to do. So I basically just, frankly, I starved myself before I went to school, and I rapidly lost, again, huge trigger warning. If you suffer with an eating disorder, major sign of what not to do, not a to do. But I lost 90 pounds in about 3 months before I went away to college. And sure, as I expected, when I went away to school, everyone was so welcoming to me and so not welcoming to people occupying larger bodies, which kind of gave me this dissonance too. But along with my weight loss came a tremendous amount of anxiety. And a lot of other medical issues started coming up too. My thyroid became dysregulated. I was constantly cold all the time. My hair was falling out in clumps, and I was having debilitating panic attacks. And this was something I had not experienced before at all. And every single doctor's appointment I went to, they said, oh, actually, you could lose 5 more pounds. And really recommending, oh, your blood pressure is low, but maybe it's because it was spiking and then it was low. So let's give you, a beta blocker. Let's give you this medication to help with your blood pressure. That'll also help with your anxiety. And it basically became, I just was this walking mystery illness. I was having these panic attacks that were so debilitating all the time. So I realized at that point, I was like, I need to kind of find a way to undo this, because I don't accept this idea that Michelle Shapiro is an anxious person now. This is the way that we view anxiety in the conventional medical system: is you have anxiety, you are an anxiety disorder. And I was like, well, I didn't have anxiety disorder 3 months ago. So I can't just have it now magically, and I can't magically get rid of it without medication. And I knew this wasn't a medication deficiency, but there was something larger going on. And that prompted me to work with a naturopathic physician who later became my business partner, because I really appreciated his approach so much. And then I kind of healed that way. So my goal with clients is I want them to heal. If they want to lose weight, do it right the first time, so that you don't actually impact your body in such a negative way along the journey that you're picking up the pieces for years after. Because it's taken me a long time to get my health back and to reverse my anxiety.
I didn't realize that your anxiety hit with the weight loss. I thought that you had always struggled with it. So that is, you learned something new. That is very interesting to me. And it brings me, we're going to skip ahead to one of my important questions, because and all these are Instagram posts from Michelle. So go follow her at Michelle Shapiro if you're liking everything we're talking about. So you have this really great post about how nutrition and lifestyle, how basically making changes to your physical body if that's impacting your mental health. Like, are you making diet changes, lifestyle changes that maybe they're supporting your physical health? Maybe, like, I'm just thinking weight loss because you just mentioned that in your story, but how is that impacting your mental health, and like, are you sacrificing that? So it sounds like that's really what you went through.
It was a total pop a weasel, right? You push one issue down and then the other one kind of pops up. And we see this all the time with clients who are working with like digestive issues, right? So they're trying to lose weight. So then they start like pounding vegetables because they think that'll help them. And then their digestive issues get worse. So it's like one issue starts to get better and the other one kind of, yeah. So our body really appreciates a very delicate equilibrium, and it really appreciates non-forceful changes, really, really gentle changes. So anytime you're going too far in one direction, there's going to be a kickback in another direction. And if your body senses any sort of huge change, even if that's one that's perceived as positive in society, there's usually something that's going to kind of rebel or rebound as a response to that. So for me, that was my body basically screaming at the top of its lungs at me, like, Michelle, please eat something. And that was my body's way of communicating to me, was through my anxiety.
How do you see this showing up in clients that you work with?
So I really view, the reason that I work with these three conditions together is because I really view them as like the trifecta, honestly, because usually if you have like a digestive issue, the actual hormones that you need to feel happy and healthy are created in your gut, right? So if your gut's not happy, your brain's not going to be happy. And then there's that beautiful feedback loop between your brain and your gut, and it kind of becomes this cycle. And altogether, a body that is stressed is going to be very weight loss resistant. So I see clients encountering anxiety we can talk about anxiety kind of from a mental level and on a physical level. So it can show up physically as low blood sugar, waking up in the middle of the night. And then it can manifest mentally as racing thoughts, or what you would prototypically, expect as anxiety. So if I see someone that goes on like a really low carb diet, 2 weeks later, they'll be like, weirdest thing. I'm waking up at 2 a.m. I have anxiety. I'm like, it's super not weird. You went way too low on carbs. Like, it's super expected that would happen. Also, here's what we can do to support you. Sorry that you're experiencing that, because it can be super uncomfortable and really scary. So it's this delicate, beautiful balance between these three that I always see. And again, if someone goes too far in the weight loss column, the anxiety starts to kick in. If someone goes too far into maybe just comforting themselves so much, you could have maybe some issues with digestion or weight too. So you have to kind of make that balance really specifically and individually.
I like too that you're so, like, you talk about making gentle changes, because I think that's so not the norm, or just not people's natural instinct when it comes to their health. They're like, "Oh, I need to go to some sort of extreme." Because that's really what society teaches us, right? Like, you have to go low carb, you have to do intermittent fasting, or whatever, vegan, whatever the extreme is, but taking it to one of those extremes. And so if you feel like you're not going hard enough, it's like, "Oh, but it's not gonna do anything." When in reality, it's really just gonna help make this process a lot easier and less stressful on your body.
Absolutely. I think it's favorable and comfortable to think in black and white for people. Definitive things are always safer to our like environmental biological brains than things that are ambiguous. So I think people think if I just do this, then X results will come. But our bodies are these like insanely complex machines, and you poke one thing, all that you talk about with minerals and hormones is this system of compensation and balance and rebounding, right? Like everything you do impacts everything else. So it's not as fun to also make gradual changes. It's more fun to make drastic changes, and people want quicker results for the things because they're actually uncomfortable. So I don't blame anyone for taking drastic measures at all. And you also mentioned something that I need to just drop on all of us, which is I was vegan during this time. My whole weight loss journey was vegan, and I was actually vegan for over 10 years, which is something, again, another trigger warning here, but I would not recommend that. I don't really, Amanda and I have a pretty similar stance on this too, but I was also slowly depleting a lot of those vitamins, minerals, and like building blocks for hormones and neurotransmitters all of that time. And I think that final weight loss was the, kind of knockout punch for my body to just say, I am over you, Michelle.
And think about it, I just think of all the things that are released when we lose body fat, like from our fat cells. I mean, toxins, iron, hormones. I mean, it's like sometimes it's like if people are struggling with weight loss, obviously there's so many reasons, but I'm like, can your liver even handle weight loss right now? Like if we're being realistic. So I'm happy that you brought that up, and whenever Michelle eats meat and stuff, I remember when she first started bringing it back in, she would like text me and be like, "You'd be so proud of me. I've had meat this many times today." And I'm like, I am very proud of you. You keep doing that.
100%. And now we bring our beef jerky on our trips together, the
Yes.
same jerkies. I love it.
With
Yeah.
what was it? Like Sour Patch Kids or something? Like,
Yeah, that was our first round. We just like forgot to eat for 5 hours, and then I started sneaking Amanda Sour Patch Kids under the table. It really did the trick.
it
Frankly,
did. We
it
were
really
using
did
our
the trick.
brains a lot. So, your brain needs glucose. So why don't we, since we've kind of like talked a little bit about anxiety, you said a few things I want to dig into more, but let's go into, because I'm sure some people are already thinking of like, wait, physical anxiety versus how it can show up mentally. Like, oh, but what about like, what are the things that most people get wrong when it comes to anxiety?
Oh, I love that question. Okay. So I would say, like, let's break it down one by one. So I think the first thing is that anxiety is an identity or a personality. So we have this idea about anxiety being, I'm just an anxious person. I'm a Jewish girl from New York, by the way. So if there was like an identifier for anxiety, it probably would be that. But I don't believe that that's an actual personality trait. I view anxiety as a messenger from your body. So anxiety is telling you, hey, either something internally or externally is not feeling safe. And for the rest of this conversation, I'm going to continuously kind of use the language of evolutionary biology. So I'll be saying, imagine you were a caveman, cavewoman. Okay. So basically, anxiety was a built in system for us to understand what our potential threats were, right? So if we were a cavewoman, and I love this example, and we wanted to go up to a different tribe and ask if we could join their crew, and they rejected us, we would get tremendous anxiety because it was a threat to our survival, right? So we desperately, as human beings, need connection. And when we lose connection, and unfortunately, like we have, so much of us been isolated, we have just this kind of baseline of anxiety because we think we're going to be attacked by a bear on our biological levels. Our biology hasn't changed so much in the past, even probably million years. So I think that those kind of cues in our environment that detect safety are working all the time. So your body can communicate anxiety to you through giving you some pangs like low blood sugar. It can give you your heart pounding. It can give you these kind of physical cues. Your legs can be shaking. You can feel your stomach aching. Those kind of cues to kind of give you a notification like, hey, we are not safe. So anxiety gets really out of control when we continue to ignore it. And this is the second kind of misconception, which is that the kind of just calm down or just relax thing, which drives me crazy as a human in general. But the way I view anxiety, and I give this visual, is there's like a little kid at the playground. I call him Timmy, and he wants his mom's attention, and he's pulling on his mom's shirt, kind of like in the Family Guy scene with Stewie and Lois, where he's like, mom, 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 and he's pulling on his mom's shirt. The more that she ignores him, the more he screams for her attention, basically. I need to tell you something. If she would just look at him and say, hey, what can I help you with? He would instantly calm down. So that's actually what we want to do with our anxiety. So the next thing I want to say is that the other big misconception about anxiety is that we should hate it. It's actually a vital survival mechanism. It's telling us, oh my God, something's really, really wrong. It's kind of like our fire alarm, right? You don't want to turn the fire alarm off if there's a fire. You want to find out what the fire is and how you can take it down, basically. So anxiety is this beautiful, sacred messenger. And the first thing you can do when you're ever feeling anxiety on a physical or mental sense is actually ask for more and lean into it. And it's so counterintuitive and so freaking unpleasant. But really, that's the only way to dissipate it, because you're telling your body, I'm acknowledging you, I hear the threat signal, and I'm here to support you. So those would be like my top 3 common misconceptions about anxiety.
I think too, it's like, I mean, I love the way you frame it, is it's actually a tool, right? It was built into us as a tool for our safety. I think it can be harder to recognize because of the world that we live in today. Like, I mean, some people do have to fear for their physical safety on a regular basis, but a lot of us don't. And so we're not necessarily looking for a tribe to be a part of, like we're creating our own lives and we have our own homes and stuff like that. So it's this idea that, okay, so maybe it's not the same circumstance, but I can still recognize this as like, what is going on? What need is not being met, or what's off in my body that's leading to the anxiety, versus like, oh my gosh, I have anxiety. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, like your mom has anxiety, so maybe it's like a genetic thing or something like that. Like, and I think that can like quickly become a part of your identity too, where it's like it runs in your family.
Yeah, it definitely is kind of 100% definitively in conventional healthcare viewed as a diagnosis and a standalone diagnosis. I don't view two things as a diagnosis, obesity, and I don't view anxiety as diagnoses. I view them more so, anxiety is just a symptom. It's just a symptom of something that you want to dive deeper into. And a good example of what you're saying is I live on the 40th floor, and the elevator's quick. It's like a minute and a half to get down on the first stop. But there'll be days when it will pause for a second and I'll just feel my heart pounding. And other days it'll stop for 10 minutes and I won't mind at all. And I'm like, ooh, it's not about the elevator. What is going on here, Michelle? And it's kind of just a cue for me to look in a little bit, like, ooh, did you not sleep well yesterday? Did you not eat regularly today? Like, what's going on with you? So when I get anxiety, I mean this honestly, coming from a person who had panic attacks several times a day, serious panic attacks, I legitimately view it as a gift when it comes now, because I'm like, oh, you've gotten my attention. How can I help you? And I really respond with compassion when it comes up now too.
I think the issue is, and just like with most things in our healthcare system, is that most people think, well, how do I fix it? They're focused so much on the anxiety and not on why it's happening. And then it makes it impossible to treat.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was exactly my experience. And every doctor, I walked out with like 10 diagnoses in that time, by the way. I was like given medications left and right. I never took one of them. I was too anxious to take the medication. I was like, there's going to be side effects of these. And I know people who are anxiety sufferers will really understand this too. But yeah, it's the idea that the body is broken and can be fixed. And the idea that if you give one medication for one thing, it won't impact other things because that's the medication for that thing. But how do you think your body responds to having its safety signals turned off, right? So I think there's some really interesting research around these medications too, because in the long term, there's some rebound effects if you go off of it, essentially, where your body's like, now I'm really going to yell at you. And yes, it's the view of the body as being broken, and that's the concern or issue.
Yeah, I've seen clients where some people have no issues. They go on, it helps, they come off, like they wean off, no big deal. It's like it barely happened. Other people, they go on, it maybe didn't help them like they thought it was going to. So then they want to come off ASAP because they're like, well, now I feel worse. Or it didn't solve my problem and now I'm taking this prescription medication. Like, how is it impacting my body? And then weaning off, it turns into a like years process of their body readjusting and working on those signals. And it can be really hard if you don't have someone like constantly reminding you. It's like, well, you did take this medication. It's going to take time for your body to readjust as you come off. It's just hard because everyone reacts differently because they'll be like, well, my friend took it and she was fine.
Exactly. And every doctor kind of prescribes it differently, which is the other issue too, because you're not sure. Some of them say willy-nilly, everyone's on Wellbutrin, take Wellbutrin, everyone's on it. Some doctors say it's going to be a really serious detox process if you decide to go off of this. So that comes into our healthcare piece of the conversation too, which is that we don't always have transparency around these medications too. And I just want to say, if you're on an SSRI anxiety medication, this is 100% not medical advice. Please discuss with your doctor before making any changes to your medication. And, there's no judgment from either of us ever if you decide to take a medication for yourself. It's your body and your choice always.
I have so many clients that have either they continue to take it, they've chosen to take it at certain times in their life in different seasons, like postpartum, whatever it is. And whether it goes well or not, there's a reason, right? I don't think there's any need for people to completely suffer, especially if they're on like that more extreme end of the health spectrum where maybe they have a ton of symptoms, they're really struggling on a day-to-day basis. It's like, it's not bad to use something like that as you're working on your health overall. Sometimes you need that and it's totally fine. So no judgment here. Can you talk a little bit more about how our gut health impacts our anxiety?
Yes, there's an information superhighway between our brain and our gut called the vagus nerve, and really impacts kind of these like different systems that are at play. And when we think about, our brain being anxious, we don't want to digest. Let's take it back to evolutionary biology. When our brains are anxious, we don't want to digest food. Okay. If you need to run from a bear or a lion or whatever geographical region you're in, right? Your body doesn't want you to be digesting, going to the bathroom along the way. It's going to halt your digestion and then speed up your digestion too. So a lot of the cues that we get for should our digestion turn on or off, we're going to get from our actual brain and it connecting to our gut too. So it's really, really powerfully positive. The other thing is that our thoughts can create those tangible changes that go between our gut and our brain, because if our brain is saying threat, stop digestion, it can alter our gut bacteria. And then right back in kind of, if we take it from the gut up, is a majority of our serotonin is produced within our gut, which is our happy hormone, right? And a lot of our hormones and neurotransmitters are produced in our gut. So if you have an imbalanced gut, if your gut's not working, then you're actually not going to have these hormones created and you're not going to get them passed through in the places that you actually need them for usage. The other thing is, just on a very, tangible, non-scientific note, right? We know, like, when we feel it's still scientific, but very layman, when we feel nervous, like we get butterflies in our stomach, right? We don't want to eat. And that can impact us right then. And really you get into this cycle of not eating, which can impact your digestion, or overeating, which can impact your digestion. That can be rooted in anxiety. So if people are seeking, again, those comfort foods because they're feeling stressed, respect, got it, understood, then that can also impact their digestion too. So you have this cycle between your brain and your gut that kind of goes around and around. And there's a lot of mental and physical inputs between the two of them. And you can get into a pretty rough cycle with it, where I have these clients who have digestive issues and the supplement protocols, gorgeous, food, perfect. Everything is going great. But if they can't get their stress and anxiety to a manageable level for their gut, or really reverse it, which is ultimately the goal of working with me, they're just not getting better. They just don't get better. And that's because their whole stress system is on the entire time. They're not activating that rest and digest system that we like to say with our parasympathetic nervous system, which is that state where you can actually digest food. If you are stimulated, you literally cannot digest food. So huge issue for people when they're anxiously eating or not eating because of it, because your entire digestion is altered from that too.
And that's such a good point. And that most people that I see that have anxiety almost always have it paired with a gut issue. Sometimes they're not even aware of the gut issue. It's like because it hasn't been bad enough for them to notice, or they've dealt with it their entire lives, so it's their norm. But most of the time they're going to be paired together. And I love what you said about how if you don't get your anxiety and stress under control, it doesn't matter how perfectly you eat, how well you take your supplements, you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick.
Absolutely. It's a physical impossibility. Our body will not feel rested enough to actually do what it needs to do to digest food. Not to mention, I have clients who have severe gut issues over long periods of time. The stress of going out to dinner for them, making sure there's a bathroom nearby, traveling, not wanting to be embarrassing or perceived as embarrassing at work functions and things like that, feeling bloated and uncomfortable in their clothes. Those are all just going to trigger that mental anxiety, just that kind of classic anxiety that we would think of, which is those racing thoughts, uncomfortable thoughts, negative thoughts, and all that too. So, you have that classical representation of it. And then also, as we know, there's all this beautiful little scientific stuff going on underneath the hood too.
Hey, Amanda here, just giving you a quick break, hopefully a break for your brain in the middle of this podcast episode, to remind you that if you haven't gone through our free training, Optimizing Hormone Health Through Mineral Balance, we really do recommend starting there. And the main reason for that is because you're going to hear us say things like mineral foundation, having a solid foundation. Are you putting the foundations in place? Especially as we get deeper and deeper into different hormonal topics and specific imbalances in the body, the mineral foundation is always going to be so essential. So if you haven't watched the free training, you can find it in our show notes, or you can go to hormonehealingrd.com and it's going to be right on that front page there. But we really recommend starting there so that you can understand how is your current mineral status, how do you assess this, and how to get started with all that, just so you can get as much as you possibly can out of the rest of the podcast episodes. But that's it. I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. And I think one of the, if you're someone that has ever or is currently dealing with anxiety or gut issues or a mix of both, hormone problems for a lot of people listening, most people are pretty desperate for information, right? And now the first place that we're going to go is going to be social media, unfortunately. I mean, I say unfortunately, but obviously we both share a lot of helpful information on social media. I want to bring this up because I think it's an important topic. A lot of people are getting the majority of their health information online. And you have one really great post about how there's a difference between there's people that are all along a spectrum. Some people are more extreme. They're they're at 10% capacity, right? They have tons of symptoms. They're really struggling day to day. Some people are just looking to optimize their health. And then there's a million people in between that. I really like how you talk about there's differences in the types of information those people need and how we need to be careful with the information that we are consuming and even applying and taking action on from the internet. Share your thoughts on that, whatever you want to share, but then also advice for people that are consuming a lot of their information on the internet and things that they should look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, we all are on the kind of, let's say there's a spectrum of health, and maybe in the negative 100 to 0 is people who are constantly symptomatic and really, really don't feel good. My heart is for those. I have to be honest, I'm biased. Those are my people. I love those people. And then kind of people from 0 to 100 who feel okay to tremendously well on any given day. When you're looking for information online, let's say it's something like anxiety, right? So we look at these pages and there's a lot of this, what I would call junk functional medicine. So functional medicine is not junk. Real functional medicine is awesome, but junk functional medicine is take this one food or one herb and heal your anxiety. Take CBD, take all these things. These independent things will heal your anxiety. For me, that's still conventional medicine, because I know your clients know by now, but the difference between functional nutrition or functional medicine and conventional medicine is we like to view things from a root cause perspective. So there's literally no way that any one supplement or one medication can make a tangible difference in your anxiety if you don't know where your anxiety is coming from. So I ask people who are specifically in the realm of sickness to not look to add on flashy, fun, and just throwing your money down the toilet on these flashy, fun supplements and products, and do the harder, more unpleasant thing of taking a look at kind of the really important lifestyle things first. You have to get sleeping 8 hours, drinking enough water, eating regularly, the right foods for your body, socializing with friends, and getting some sunlight before you focus on adding this like new high-tech, cool biohacking supplement. Now, if you're at 95% health and you just want to, like an infrared sauna 30 minutes was really going to do it for me, that's totally possible. But if you're trying to climb, 100 percentage points to just get to 0 to where you can feel okay, it's always going to come down to those essential lifestyle things. And one supplement's not going to do it for you. So I would be really wary of social media posts that say, these are the foods that fix anxiety. These are the top supplements to fix your anxiety, because it's so individualized. And also you have to address the root cause. I'm a firm believer when it comes to anxiety and gut issues and weight loss that these are not things that I like to manage or cope with. I hate those words. My goal would be to reverse them. All of those kind of Instagram posts that are like, these foods for this, are really intended to help in the moment, maybe reduce a symptom, but really lead you away from looking at the root cause and getting into it. So anything that looks, they're always so cute, these graphics too. I'm like, oh, who's their designer? They're adorable, these graphics, but really avoiding, one-stop solutions for larger things that are going on in the body. So I'm going to say something controversial, which is that I actually don't believe that the first thing you should look for on someone's Instagram is their credentials, because I think that we can vary a lot in our experience. Now, if someone has like a 1-month nutrition certification, are they going to have as much basic scientific knowledge as someone with a 5-year degree? Probably not, if we're playing a statistics game. But otherwise, I wouldn't be looking for expertise first. I would be looking for the way information is displayed. And what I always love to look for is when there's really no ego in the information too. I think that's really important, because most likely the better practitioners have worked with people for so long and so deeply. And Amanda, you'll attest to this too. And don't be scared by me saying this, but it's almost like the more you know, the less you know. And that's how we feel as when you drop your ego in a healthcare position, you realize that there's so much more to learn about everything. Even when you're an expert in an area, someone who flaunts themselves as the expert with the answer is someone that I would avoid. So someone who's saying, here's what I've got. I've seen it work really well with people before. I like that person better. And I like a practitioner who can say, I don't know, but I'll find out. So really looking for practitioners, not necessarily only based on their credentials. And this is a very controversial thing to say, as a registered dietitian with a lot of, academia under both of our belts, but look for the practitioner who is willing and eager to research and has had really, tangible, successful experiences with clients. And that seems to be really positive. It's hard to navigate social media, also looking for information based on what's for you and what isn't, but try to weed out, is this person helping people in that 0 to 100? Or are they helping people in that negative 100 to 0? I'm at a negative 99 right now. I feel like crap. I don't need to be going to someone who's like, you have to try the cryotherapy. It's like, that's not your person right now, but it might be in the future. So find the people who are where you're at and who really have no ego. That's the goal.
I love that. I think especially when we think about who we're following, like you said, who are the types of people that they're helping? Like sometimes we come across a really popular post and we think, oh my gosh, this has so much engagement. There's like 1 billion likes and all these comments. That person might not be talking to you, right? Like I get so many like menopausal women that are like, does this apply for menopause? I'm like, I mean, I literally say in all of my marketing that like I help menstruating women. Do I help menopausal women? Yes. I help a lot of women transition into menopause, but it is different. And there are some specifics that are slightly different. So it's like, that's when I recommend Maria and Kristen from Wise and Well. I'm like, hey, this post is not for menopause, but you know who is? Here's an account. And is it difficult to like, not everyone's going to send you to another account because obviously that's like time consuming on the practitioner's part, but it's just important to keep in mind, who is this person talking to and serving? And if you're not sure, like look at their bio, look at their website, because most of the times we know if something is meant for us or not if we really sit there and try to listen. Like you might see the supplement and be like, oh, I don't really know about that. That feels weird. Or like a food recommendation or a diet recommendation. Usually that first response is correct, and to try to listen to that if you can. Most of us know what we need if we can just kind of quiet all of the noise around us. And that can be really hard with social media because there's just so much information constantly at our fingertips. There's a million videos you can watch, a million reels. Like, it's really, and it's difficult now with marketing. A lot of people use really black and white fear mongering type posts because they do well. But I would say try to go to the people that you feel like actually care. Maybe you get really annoyed when they say like, I'm not really sure. It kind of depends on the person, but that's a good response. Okay. Like, we don't want to be getting medical advice on the internet.
Exactly. And you have been so committed to just presenting the truth and factual pieces of information that you've seen in research. And you, like me, we're the first people. If we think a new study comes out that disproves us, we're like, all right, cool, let's look into this. And the willingness to just be fervent in your beliefs of something when you've seen it so many times, but also be willing to have an openness to seeing something in a new way, I think is really important. Nutritional science is really, really, really hard. It's like a lot of observational studies. It's just not good, like, scientific criteria, because you can't really have that because there's so much human like impact on it. So we're interpreting the research as much as we can and using both of our experience working with thousands of clients to enact it the best way we can. But we're the first to admit when, you know what, this changed and this feels totally different. And what we learned in school as dietitians is totally different than what we practice now, even though the basis of science might be the same. But I think that willingness to accept new information is super important too.
I will say I do not live and die by studies, and I'm probably the only dietitian that's going to say this, but I don't love when people are like, I'm 100% evidence-based. I'm like, so you don't use any of the knowledge that you learn in clinical practice? It's like, because half the time what I see in a study doesn't even match up at all with what I see in practice, because those studies are done on men or menopausal women or women on the pill. And so I just feel like a lot of people will be like, oh, show me the study. I'll get other RDs that reach out to me wanting the PubMed ID. And I'm like, uh, first of all, like,
sorry, just
Google it. I mean, it's not that hard. If I said,
take the words I said and put it into Google, and then it'll and type PubMed at the end.
Please Google things before you reach out to someone. Like, this is just like a PSA. Google them, look at their feed. I have so many posts. Go to their blog. I have a blog on my website that you can search to find things. It can be pretty frustrating when you feel like you're trying to put all this information out there and then, you know, people send you like rude comments and stuff. But basically, when it comes to like evidence-based stuff, like, we'll be waiting forever. The science is so behind, at least I feel, what I see in my day-to-day practice.
I think there's a date. I think it's 20 years is around what they say.
Yeah.
It takes 20 years for the science to shift. So what we're learning 20 years ago is what we're seeing now, basically.
And then it makes it even harder when, you know, I have clients and this is going to bring us into the healthcare part of the discussion, but clients that will bring studies, because I just have these nerdiest, loveliest women in my community, and they'll bring studies if they're trying to get a specific test or maybe like something ordered by their doctor, and they'll bring studies and the doctor doesn't even look at it, or they're like, well, I don't have time to view this, or this is only one small study or whatever. And it's really frustrating, especially when you're going that extra mile. The studies are helpful. Yes, we want to listen to science, but it's also important to listen to people. And I think that's something that you do really well.
Yeah, I think you do too, by the way. I think that, again, if you are bringing a doctor, you're in pain and you're scared and you're looking for answers and you're being met with ego and condescension, to me, it's like the biggest crime. And like every doctor takes an oath, do no harm, as the first kind of like principle that all doctors labor under. And to me, that is so harmful to people who are like literally begging for answers. It makes my skin crawl thinking about like your clients who are so committed to their health that they're like, I know the only way I can communicate with this person who I'm paying money to is to try to prove something to them. So I actually have a just playing off of that a little bit. I have a workaround with that too. So if your doctor happens to be egoic, but like ego having, but you can't actually see another doctor, so you have to go to this practitioner, always come through with the symptoms, not the diagnosis. So don't come with the answers, come with more questions and boundaries. So what I like to have my clients do, and I have on my website, it's a freebie, is how to leave your doctor appointment without feeling like crap. And what I want people to do is just take basically everything that's going on with them and put it on a piece of paper, draw a little human body on it, or you can download it from my website, and then draw little lines on the side of it and say, here's, next to my head, I have headaches every day. Next to my gut, I have stomach aches all the time. And go to the doctor with your symptoms. They can't do much with research. They're not going to read it. And they, unfortunately, and they can't do much with, if you say, I have this diagnosis or I heard this. But what they can do, and you can do, is force them to look at the bigger picture by showing them the bigger picture. But I think that going in with the research, as noble and sweet and courageous as that absolutely is, I can see how that's not going to work in this current healthcare system, which stinks. And I just love that about your membership, gals, though. I do. And I can also see, again, maybe an alternative that might work.
Yeah. And I'll make sure that I link that how to leave your doctor's appointments handout that you have in the show notes. But I usually say like data, right? It's the same thing. Like, especially if you're seeing like your gynecologist or you're trying to get someone to like order hormone labs for your thyroid panel or something like that. Michelle said, symptoms, put it on that little like person, write it in. Or if you're tracking your cycle, your basal body temperature. And does it suck that sometimes a doctor doesn't know that a low body temperature is going to mean hypothyroid? Yes. But it's still better to bring as much information as you can. And at least that can give them a reason to go ahead and order the labs. And then maybe the labs come in and they're like, okay, now we can do something because I was wrong and something is totally off.
I also have another trick based on what you just said too. So I like to play the confusion card. This is not, I would never write this in a blog entry or something. I'm just telling you guys this on Amanda's podcast. But I would be like, isn't it, I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but like, isn't like your body temperature related to your thyroid or something? Is that what it was? I thought I read that somewhere. I could be totally wrong. You're the doctor. Obviously, you know better. But I would almost be like a little bit coy about it and a little confused about it and let them still draw the conclusion. Listen, in a perfect, normal healthcare system, I wouldn't be advising people to play games. I would advise transparency. But if you know, and I know, there are just doctors who are operating under this condescending, egoic model. And if you need something from them, you might have to frame it a different way. And I hate that it has to be a game, but if it has to, I'll teach you the rules of the game too.
I can't even picture you being like that. I have too much like built up rage to do that.
I know, I'm so direct.
No way.
Yeah.
That actually was a great answer to one of the questions I had about just what like a lot of my clients feeling frustrated, not getting what they want out of their doctor's appointments. Or I have a lot of people that ask me like, which doctor should I see? And they can't even get a referral from kind of their main PCP because they don't know who they should see. So again, like, write down all of your main issues, because the more information you bring them, the better that they're going to be able to help you. And these appointments are short, right? So it has to be timely. If you track your cycles, bring that information, have some specifics. I love, like, most apps are going to have like a summary page of like all your averages. That's what I usually tell my clients to share. I think those are some really important points. We have to get to the lose weight question, because
I'm here. I'm ready.
I just need to hear you talk about this. So one of my biggest pet peeves, and something that I hear probably the most frequently from clients and women in my community, is when they go to their doctor's visits, no matter what it's about, if they have weight to lose, even if they don't, oftentimes when they're bringing up a concern, a symptom, or a lab test they want to look at, or maybe they're looking to optimize their health, usually it's like they have a pretty major issue and they have concerns and they're told to just lose weight. Can you talk about your feelings on that, and then any recommendations for people that are in this situation?
First of all, let's all take a deep breath, because after you said that, I lost my breath. That phrase makes me lose my breath. Yeah. So first of all, the phrase just lose weight is what I like to call lazy healthcare. That is lazy healthcare. It's like if you went to the doctor and you said, I have an earache, and they said, oh, you should stop having an earache then. So if people are coming asking for solutions, again, weight gain is a symptom. It's not a diagnosis. So you're telling people to fix the symptom without telling them, A, how to do it. So if a doctor says that to you, first of all, just direct response. Okay, how? Cool, how? That's the first thing I would say. And I've said it if doctors have ever said it to me, I would say, cool, how? The other thing I want to say is this, the confusion card's a game and everything like that. But the one thing you have to be transparent about is your boundaries. So if this is a doctor who does not specialize in nutrition, if this is a doctor who does not have experience with weight loss specifically and seeing people long-term for weight loss, I would walk into the office and set the boundary and say, unless I am distinctly asking you about weight, I am not going to have a discussion about weight today. There's no reason for me to be weighed. I'm here for strep throat. I don't need to be weighed. So I think that is something that you can be, it's really hard. I know, seriously, everyone, I know how hard it is to do that, but that is a hard and set boundary I bring into every single appointment. I say, weight is not on the table for me, essentially. That in and of itself will turn the conversation around. But again, someone telling you to just lose weight, to me, first of all, tells me they literally have no idea how to help you to do that. And what happens in doctors' offices more often than not is they're going to recommend a vegan diet. Just because 20 years ago, the cardiovascular literature told us vegan diets help with heart disease, which we know has been huge meta-analyses have come out recently that have just proven basically those original studies that were much smaller. But that's really the basis you're going to run under. So if this is where I would say we would focus on expertise, not on Instagram, but if you're in a doctor's office and it's not their specialty, remembering in these conversations around nutrition and weight that doctors take one nutrition class in their million years of schooling. However, it's very different depending on what type of doctor, but they are extremely educated. But the one thing they're not educated on is nutrition, because that's not the model of healthcare in our country. So the model of healthcare in our country is fix the broken body. It's not heal the body, reverse conditions from the inside out using nutrition and supplements. If you were seeing a doctor in a different country, by the way, they would absolutely be asking you about your nutrition. And a doctor should never comment on your weight if they haven't asked you about your nutrition in the first place, by the way. So that's another thing. If the doctor has not asked you about your nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, sleep, everything, they should not be telling you to lose weight. And you have every right to say, I'm not engaging in this conversation with you. This is not what I'm here for. Every right to set that boundary. And I hope I can hype you up to do that. And then on a just compassionate, soft note, I know how when I was a teenager, I was petrified of going to the doctor's office because I would get like terrible. It was almost like report cards, but I liked report cards. I was like nerdy. I was like, going to the doctor's office was so scary because they bully you about your weight in the doctor's office. And I remember one doctor who herself, I just remember being so angry as a teenager because I'm like, I wanted to be like, you're overweight too. And like, I remember that like salty part of myself coming up, but she was like, you should just like eat turkey sandwiches. And I was like, what? I was like, what does that mean? Like, it's so out of, like, she was just like lean meat or something. And I was like, that's so out of context. And then prompted to tell me, oh, you're going to get diabetes if you don't, my blood sugar was fine, but she was like, in the future, you're going to get diabetes if you don't stop what you're doing. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm freaking 11 years old. What am I doing? I don't know. And really, again, so if the doctor is not a specialist in nutrition, does not ask you about your nutrition, or if you don't want it, you have every right to refuse to be weighed in a doctor's office. You have every right to have a discussion about your weight in a doctor's office.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing to keep in mind, we've seen this over and over, and now we know it's like weight is a symptom. It is not the cause. Even when people talk about like obesity epidemic, all that stuff. Okay, but why? Right? It's not like that's the obesity, the weight is not the issue. There is a deeper issue leading to that weight change, and that should be the focus. And so it's so hard to advocate for yourself when you're at the doctor. And I totally get that. And this is something that I feel like I talk about with clients all the time is I'm like, it's okay to disagree with them. People disagree with me all the time, which is normal. Right? That is like a very normal and healthy thing.
2 humans
to do.
Not one is a god and one's a person. Both are human beings.
Exactly. And your doctor should be working with you, alongside you. They should not just be telling you what to do. Like whenever I go
your doctor should be working for you.
Well, yeah, for you. But I think of like a healthcare practitioner. It's like, I never just give someone a protocol. I'm like, how does this feel? Like, do you think you can do this? Should we like remove some of this stuff? Like, here's what's absolutely essential. Here's what I think would be great if you can handle it. And like, what do you want to focus on? That's usually not how it's going to be in the doctor's office. But I think if you can open up that dialogue and that conversation, it can be. So I have some doctors that have been so receptive, and I've been absolutely wonderfully shocked. And I've had many that have not, but it doesn't hurt to at least try to have that conversation.
Absolutely. And leave the door open. Remember, they are highly educated, and a majority of them did go into it for the right reasons. So this is not a bashing doctor saying some of my best friends, some of my favorite human beings on planet Earth are doctors. Some of the smartest people I know are doctors. And there are a lot of good apples. They're not all bad by any means, and we really need them. So for sure, going in with a really positive attitude. I also recommend doing some breath work before going into appointments, because it really can be legitimately traumatizing. Getting on a scale for people can be traumatizing. Walking into a doctor's office, we don't usually go to the doctor to brag about how well we're doing, right? We're already in a vulnerable state because we're often seeking answers. So acknowledge and give compassion to yourself for the vulnerability that it is, and try to go in with an open mind and as much information as you possibly can.
And then the one last thing I want to dig into is you recently did an Instagram post about how good healthcare shouldn't be a secret. And I was like, yes. And this is kind of what we're talking about, right? Like, obviously, Michelle and I, like, even Michelle, she was talking about, she has a naturopath she recommends that you worked with, you recommend other people. I'm often recommending other practitioners, or people are like, kind of like asking me, like, who should I see for this? Or like, I often think of clients with endometriosis, like they really need a team, right? That condition really needs a team of providers because there's so many different facets. It's like, okay, but how do I find that, right? It can seem like it's out of reach and that it's not accessible for so many people. So can you talk a little bit about what you mean when you say like good healthcare shouldn't be a secret, and how you're specifically working to make good healthcare more accessible?
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is like the juicy stuff. So for years, I've been working with clients, and I have worked with over 1,000 clients over however long I've been a dietitian, I don't know, 7 years or something. In that time, I realized, wow, what we do, even as holistic, functional dietitians, we can really get in there, but I still need this testing from a doctor. I still need these pieces of the puzzle. I still need another set of eyes on this. There's still a part of this that really we need collaboration with in healthcare. And remember, Amanda and I are not egoic practitioners, so I don't own your healthcare. I'm a little tiny piece of the puzzle for an overall client's experience and their healing journey. So what I've been doing for years is honestly just like directly connecting my clients with practitioners and doctors. And what I actually do is I go to the length of sitting in the appointment with them too. So I'm like, I'll come to the appointment. I will be your person. You've been working with me for 6 months. I've totally have a good grasp on your health. If you need to express something to them, and I think it also takes away that veil of this is the expert, and I'm just like not important enough, and I'm not smart enough to understand this conversation. And even though I would never recommend a practitioner who did that, I think people don't feel safe in doctors' offices too. So I like to just, I'm like, I'll bring my people, you'll bring your people, we'll have a medical party basically. So I think that for a lot of people, I even have dietitian friends who are like, oh my gosh, you have a doctor who will like get these tests for your clients. And I'm like, it shouldn't be like that. It should be really easy to do this. And so I developed this system. It's a monthly membership called Wellness Map, where clients can basically learn A, how to navigate these appointments better, B, exactly what practitioners they're going to need to see, and then give you those referrals for what those practitioners look like. So the practitioners in my membership are all first and foremost super compassionate. They are qualified practitioners, of course, but they really, really listen to clients. And then I also am in the unique position to be able to jump in, and I'm not recommending anyone in the Wellness Map membership who is not highly vetted and has not worked with many of my clients before. So if someone wanted to even apply to be a practitioner, I'd need to speak with a tremendous amount of their clients to understand what that experience is like. And there's this idea of healthcare being like, good healthcare being like a secret. There's like a boys club around it where it's like, you kind of feel like it's like, is that person so rich and that's why they get good healthcare? Is that person like a healthcare professional themselves? And I really want to just, there's literally no reason everyone shouldn't have good healthcare. It as is very cost prohibitive to get crappy healthcare. It's equally cost prohibitive to get good healthcare. And I'm trying in whatever way I possibly can by providing honestly free services in this membership for people too, for them to try and experience functional medicine. And another feature that I'm really excited about related to this, the secrecy point, is I'm going to actually have my naturopathic physician, Dr. Kotsko. He's going to just jump on for a couple hours onto a live with everyone in the membership. And people are going to say, here's what's going on with me. And he's going to say, here's the type of doctor you should be seeing, which I think a lot of people are like, I don't even know where to start. I feel terrible all over. What do I do? So I'm so excited for that. And we're going to have one already next month. Will be scheduled. And actually by the time this airs, we'll have like 4 under our belt already. But
Yeah.
he's going to come on and give that information to people, because there's no reason any of this should be a secret. And mostly every other country, they've got it figured out where it's a lot more normal than this. It is really weird here. It's like this weird game obstacle, and you have to know someone to get good healthcare. And then it's not even good when you get there. I just want it to be normal, basically. So I'm not going to change the whole system, but I'm going to give people the workarounds that they need to actually kind of game the system as much as they can.
And I think that's one of the coolest parts about it. If you weren't going to mention, I was like, you have these Q&As. Like, I feel like, honestly, that's one of the biggest benefits for people, to talk to a physician and say, hey, like a functionally minded physician, say, hey, here's my background. Here's what's going on. What kind of doctor should I see? Because half the battle is just figuring that out. And then you also have classes and interviews inside there too, right?
Yeah, so there's this piece of it called wellness perks, which is like, for what I would assume would actually be people's favorite thing, which is that they get these access to free services. So at the time of this airing, there'll be more, but for the first launch, when it's opening next week, oh my gosh, when I'm listening to this, I'm going to be like, wow, what a journey it's been the past, however long. They basically get free access to services. It could be like free acupuncture, free cryotherapy, free of those things that could help someone at the negative 100 or the positive 100, to just like dip their toe in it a little bit, just to see if it's something that actually makes them feel good. And then maybe at the facilities, they might want to work with those practitioners. And any perk I give, I'm going to do an interview with the practitioner. So if I say, here, you should try this cryotherapy, I'm going to show you who's administering this cryotherapy, and I'm going to interview them, so you have trust in this person, because I have trust in this person, and I want you to build trust with every practitioner you work with. So I want you to get a feel for it, so you don't just walk in from a Yelp, from any kind of referral, and not know what you're going to get. I want total transparency and to see exactly what you're going to get. And I also just want to get people as much free services as possible, because I know how totally wonky the system is, especially in New York City. So I'm going to try to do the best I can to help people with that too. And you don't have to be in New York City to join the membership at all. It's just where the first perks are coming in. It'll give people a good reason to fly there, Amanda.
And I love Wellness Map. I was like, I kind of can't believe this hasn't been invented yet, Michelle. Like, you're like really on top of this, because when you think about it, it makes sense that you are kind of gathering all these resources for people in one place. And like, even like, I'm going to have a class in there. A bunch of our practitioner friends are going to have classes. So like, not only can you learn and take stuff away from the classes, but then if you need to go a step further and find someone to help you with your specific health issue, I feel it's one of the best ways, and like streamline ways to do that.
Yeah, I hope it's like a little marketplace for people and a community, and that's my goal for it, is for people to really feel like that. I have to do one more feature, Amanda, just one more tiny feature, which is something that you've actually done in the past, which is, working with Amanda for, I'm sure if you're listening to this, if you've worked with her or you're going to work with her, please work with her. Like, there's no one better. She is this compassionate expert in this lane. And Amanda's going to be my person for the Master Your Minerals program if people wanted to do hair mineral testing or wanted to learn more about their hormones. So it's going to be a portion of it where people are actually going to be able to find practitioners to order some of these really challenging tests to get. And I know, like, let's say something like a Dutch test, which Amanda works with intimately. Usually you have to work with a practitioner for months at a time to be able to get those tests. It could be thousands of dollars just initiating to start that. So there's different lab packages for all different kinds of tests and all different kinds of conditions, where it's kind of like an a la carte menu, and you can buy just the test with an analysis with a practitioner. And then if you want to work with a practitioner in the future, you can choose to do that. But you don't have to buy everything up front. You can actually just get the test and the analysis to start with, so you have some tangible working points from the beginning. So I'm trying to limit and cut corners as much as I can and limit the costs for everyone. And I have so many healthcare professional friends in New York who can't even get access to these tests. So they're themselves are like, oh my God, I'm a doctor and I've never been able to take this test. I want to do it myself. So that part's really exciting too.
Yeah, I think that having testing accessible is important, but also knowing which test is the right test. So if you do on this map, make sure that you figure out which test is the most appropriate for you. Because I will say, I see so many women spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on tests that I'm like, yeah, that probably won't really help you move the needle. But again, that's the benefit, to talk within the community and figure out which one's right for you.
Exactly. And Amanda's program will be in the community as well, and showcased very loudly in the community because I love Master Your Minerals and all the work that Amanda's doing. One of my literal favorite practitioners, and I think there's not one client of mine who doesn't follow you on Instagram at this point. I'm like, go follow Amanda. Go follow Amanda right now.
A lot of them have done hair testing, which I love.
I love that.
It's been really cool, but I'll put the link for Wellness Map in the show notes for this podcast. And then if you guys do join, I will have a discount code for the course. So like anything that's the other perk is like, if you need to do multiple courses and stuff, it's a lot easier, or order multiple tests because you're going to be getting them at discounted rates. So I'm excited for Wellness Map. I can't wait to share about it when you officially launch. And I just really appreciate you for being here and talking about some of these harder topics with me.
Yes, the literal, as I said, joy of my day, of my week. You are one of my favorite humans, definitely my favorite practitioner. Thank you all for listening so much. And if I were to leave with like one sentence, it doesn't matter if you're at a negative 100, 0, or 100. There's always a 10% you can go up, and there's always something you can do. You could be having 100 panic attacks a day. You could be vomiting 10 times a day. No matter where you're at, there's always somewhere for you to go, and just don't ever lose hope. Listen to your bodies. And thank you so much, Amanda, for having me on the podcast today. Thank you so much for listening to us, guys. Oh my gosh, what a privilege.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for listening to the Are You Menstrual podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a review and sharing the podcast with someone you think it will help. If you are new here, we can't recommend enough to start with our mineral imbalance quiz. This is going to give you an idea if you are at low, moderate, or high risk for mineral imbalances. And then, of course, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Hormone Healing RD, and consider signing up for our newsletter. If you like nerding out and you are just loving these podcasts, but maybe you're a little bit more visual and you want to see things too, we go into a ton of detail in our weekly newsletter. So we would love to have you join us there. All right. Thank you. And we will see you in the next episode.